I could have introduced cognitive linguistics with some great books, and I've tried that with students. It didn't work. And I've tried condensing bits of books and explaining bits of books, but that didn't work very well either. So I've resorted to this, and I think this encapsulates the basic idea behind cognitive linguistics much better. So the idea of cognitive linguistics is that the body and the mind and language are all interconnected. You cannot understand any one of those three things without understanding the other two. And most importantly, thought and language are embodied. So the way that we talk, the way we think, is to do with our experience of physical beings. So here, a crab obviously wouldn't talk about going forward, because a crab doesn't go forward. So I'm just going to move the crab sideways, which is what the crab would do. Whereas people move forward because of how our bodies are made. So it's to do with our physical experience, our sensory motor system, and so on. We have eyes at the front of our heads, and we walk in a forward direction. And so we experience time as something that's in front of us, because we walk towards the future. We walk towards things, and so experience time as either passing by us or we go forward in time. But also, we have goals which are in front of us. We look towards our goal, we move towards our goals, so we walk towards them. So going forward is a metaphor which has two parts to it. It's a conflation of two metaphors, both to do with coming up in the future and to do with what we want to achieve. Admittedly, since Friday morning, that conflation of metaphors doesn't seem to work, but never mind. Now, we have these two metaphors. Now, in cognitive linguistics, these are referred to as conceptual metaphors, so they're ways of understanding the world. So we understand the world in this way, as if the future is something in front of us. Now, literally, of course, the future isn't in front of anything, it's not in space, but we experience time as a kind of space, as something along a line. So we use the same prepositions at and in and on when we're talking about time as we do about space, because of how we conceive of it. So we imagine at some deep, often unconscious level, that the future is in front of us and that our goals are in front of us. And we express these conceptual metaphors, these ways of framing the world, of understanding the world, in the way we talk. So we say these kinds of things. We're approaching our next appointment, we're moving ahead, we're on our way, the future's ahead of us, something's coming up. So sort of on the horizon, it's appearing. We've left the past behind. And to an extent, these are cultural phenomena. So in some cultures, actually, the future is behind us because you can't see it. You don't know what's in the future, so it's behind you because you can't see it. Whereas the past is in front of you because you can see it. And in fact, there are little bits of that in English. So our forefathers are in front of us. In a sense, it's form, it's in front of us. But that's unusual. In most cultures, and in most uses of English, the future is in front. Right. Now here's a conceptual metaphor that I was interested in relation to teaching hard things. So when I got the email about the colloquium, teaching hard things, this was what I thought of. That ideas are food and teaching is feeding. And we do all of these things. We spoon feed our students, give them some food, make ideas palatable, and present information in bite-sized chunks, if we can. Encourage our students to chew things over, sugar the pill, stuff them with knowledge, and then regurgitate. If we're lucky. So here's a hard thing. So if ideas are food and teaching is feeding, then hard things are things which are hard to eat. And in cognitive linguistics, there's this very strong idea that if you've got the same word in different contexts, different situations, they're not actually different. They are polysemes. They are basically the same word or the same idea, but they're expressing different sorts of aspects of the same idea. So this is hard, and teaching whether we should describe what happened to the Native Americans in the 19th century as a Holocaust is also a hard thing, but they are both basically coming from this experience of something being difficult to open, difficult to get through, it's in the way, and a walnut is a hard thing. You want to get inside it, you want to get into the flesh, you want to get into it, but you can't. You've got this hard exterior. So, one of the metaphors that interested me was that if an idea is difficult, we might sugar the pill. So, it makes you think of Mary Poppins. So, that seems appropriate, to sugar the pill if it's medicine, because then it'll help it go down. And there's a temptation, I think, sometimes to teach hard things by sugaring it, putting a bit of sugar on the hard thing, and then it'll be easier for the students to digest. And you get that, I think, in a lot of museums. I take the children to museums. My mother used to run a museum, so I noticed the way that museums try to make the ideas that they're presenting palatable to children. So they have lots of interactive displays and screens and buttons you can press and levers that you pull and things flaps you lift and sort of checklists. So they give the kids bits of paper and you have to find these things and tick them when you found them. And here's an example. So you go to an art gallery and you can be given this funky thing which you stare at, some sort of screen, and you press buttons and that's supposed to sort of sugar the pill. But what concerns me with a lot of these things is that it doesn't actually get into the flesh underneath. So you've still got the hard shell around the thing that you're supposed to be feeding to the visitor to the museum in this case. Because all they do is they look at the screen, press the buttons and it goes bleep bleep, and they think, oh wow, right, I'm enjoying it, it's great. So then look at the pictures. So you're putting sugar on it and they're licking off the sugar, and it's still there, it's still got the walnut. Anyway, so that's what you want. You want to get the flesh. There's the sugar. So here's an example. Suppose you're teaching what empiricism is, just as an example of a hard thing. Okay. So this is from Wikipedia. So you want to explain empiricism, and obviously the students look on Wikipedia, and this is what they get. It's hard. You've got the hard shell. You've got to penetrate through it. It's just a load of text. And we can try to sugar that a bit. This is what Wikipedia does. Here's the sugar. It's a nice picture. And quite often the students don't get any further. They can't get through the shell. So just going back to the idea of the cognitive linguistics, that all ideas that we have are basically to do with our physical experience. So you can trace back ideas and theories and so on back to our physical experience of the world and how we are made up physically. Often it's quite complicated because you've got a conflation of different ideas. So, for example, if they're going forward, you've got a conflation of two ideas there. But basically, it's to do with embodiment. So, going back to the basic physical experience and idea of empiricism, it's here. This is the conceptual metaphor that underlies empiricism. Understanding is grasping, which goes back to experience that we have as tiny children, that to understand things, we manipulate things. And when we're even younger, we put them in our mouths, so that's where the ideas of food and teaching is feeding comes in as well. But anyway, so we have this conceptual metaphor which underlies empiricism, and that's expressed in our language. So we say these kinds of things. We get hold of ideas, get to grips with them, play with them, catch what people mean. And ideas are slippery, difficult to handle, go over our heads, all that sort of thing. So these are the ways we talk about ideas, because we do experience ideas as something that we grasp, and that's the basic idea behind empiricism. So that was just an example of going this way. So the underlying conceptual metaphor to do with physical experience rather than that way is just pouring sugar on. While I was looking into this, I looked up the etymology of empiricism, which is interesting. It comes from Greek, empiros, and comes from Proto-Indo-European word, per, meaning to try. Sorry, nearly finished. I'm into this kind of thing. So Proto-Indo-European word to try or to risk something. That's where we get peril from. Interesting. And also, it's where we get the word pirate from. Because they have a go, they try to catch a ship. So that's a bit of sugar, really.
We need it.
So that's about it, I think. Yeah, there's some references. Really good. Let's move on.
Thanks very much. You heard the clanking of the cups and saucers, and so the food metaphor heads us in that direction. But are there quickly any points for Sarn?
Let's have some tea then.
Sarn, what if you don't like walnuts?
There are other hard things.
Sorry. So what would you, if you've got this hard thing to crack,
yeah.
what would you do in the learning environment to start to break the nut open?
Yeah, well, we'll try to see what the underlying physical idea is that the idea is based on. So, well, take one from my field, which is teaching English, mainly teaching English as a foreign language. Trying to explain the difference between verbs which are followed by an infinitive and verbs which are followed by a gerund. So, for example, I was walking along and I stopped to eat something. I was walking along and I stopped eating something. So whether it's followed by eating or to eat, it's different meaning. And there are different verbs are followed by either the infinitive or the gerund. So you can have, I remember locking the door, or I remembered to lock the door. Or, you want to think of any other examples? Difficult to think of one off the top of my head. Okay. But the physical idea behind them relates to other uses of those word forms. So to anything that begins with to is often something to do with an intention or something in the mind. So if you say I went to see somebody is an intention. Whereas if it ends with ing, it's usually something in progress. So now we're seeing somebody, now I'm talking, now I'm wittering on. So it's going on now. So the ing always relates to something happening. It's always an experience of something happening at the same time. Whereas the other one, the experience is going to, so it's looking forward, so it's directional to something in the future. So you've got something in your mind's eye, so it's an intention. So that form of words, that form of language is to do with our physical experience, and it ties in with other ways that we use the same words.
Yeah, maybe getting people to do the thing, like going over and getting a cup of tea now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Thanks, Sarn.